Radio. V81 Radio. V81 Radio. V81 Radio. V81 Radio.
Our Almighty God, Creator of heaven and earth, Father and lover of our soul, you sit on your throne of mercy and rule with your love and faithfulness. You are full of grace. We acknowledge your presence in our lives. Nothing is hidden in your eyes, even our challenges and struggles in life. We come to you with faith. We ask not only for our daily spiritual bread, but to seek your forgiveness and undeserving favor to heal our land, our family members, our friends and neighbors, even our enemies with COVID-19 and other diseases. Holy Spirit, help us to deepen our faith and see the opportunity to believe, obey, and worship. As we face this pandemic, you are Lord and God. Encourage us and change our hearts, not to fear, but to be full of hope and find ourselves praying and meditating your word. We believe no works of the enemy prosper to your children. Abba, Father, we believe that your Son Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. He is the truth and our salvation. Hear our prayers, O Lord, and most of all, not our will, but thy will be done. We pray this in Jesus' name, the name above all names, who was and is to come. Amen.
Naghahatid saya sa mga Pinoy, mga kanta at programang Tatak Pinoy. Napapanood at napapakinggan kahit saan ka man. Streaming worldwide. In South Manila, this is V81 Radio.
Malayo ka man sa iyong pamilya, dito ay hindi ka nag-iisa. Tiyak ito'y iyong hahanap-hanapin, dahil ito ang nagpapasaya sa atin.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Ito ang radio mo, ito ang radio ko.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Dahil mahal namin kayo.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Para sa inyo ito, V81 Radio. Ito ang paborito ng bawat Pilipino. Basta all hits, all Pinoy, panalo. Merong kwentong iyakan at tawanan. Kahit nasaan ka man, ito'y mapapakinggan. Oh,
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
ito ang radio mo, ito ang radio ko.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Dahil mahal namin kayo.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Para sa inyo ito, V81 Radio. Ito ang radio mo, ito ang radio ko. Dahil mahal namin kayo. Para sa inyo ito, V81 Radio.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program anchors and producers and do not necessarily reflect the policies and position of this station. Discover the best-kept secrets in metaphysics, law of attraction, science, and spirituality, and listen to practical mystics from around the world. Let's open Pandora's box with Reverend Reg Tan, your metaphysical minister, here in Practical Magic, your practical mystic source, only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Satnam, everyone. I am Reverend Reg, and today is March 7, 2021, and we're continuing our talk about creating positive karma in your life. And I know a lot of people hear about karma, and a lot of people have a lot of questions about it. And this is such an amazing opportunity that we have today because our guest for today is my colleague, Dr. Yolanda Dukes, and she's someone who has amazing experience about how to create positive karma in our lives and how we can actually use this knowledge to reverse whatever seeming limitations or challenges that we have, whether it's in our personal lives or our professional lives. So I want to share with everyone, one of the reasons why I find metaphysics, science, and spirituality such an important topic to discuss all together. It's because even with all these things that we're experiencing in our personal lives or our collective experience, whether it's a health issue, money issue, career issue, are you getting the opportunities that you want, or do you feel that you're working so hard but opportunities aren't really working to your favor? So are there actually steps that we can take to make things work for us? And is there something that we must do to actually be in the flow of the universe? So let me just give you a brief background of our guest. And she actually has an AA in paralegal studies, a BS in legal studies, a bachelor's degree in metaphysics, a master's degree in metaphysics, and she's also a doctor of philosophy, specializing in mystical research, and currently pursuing a second doctorate in metaphysical hypnosis. So, without further ado, let me welcome our lovely guest today, Dr. Yolanda Dukes.
Hi, Reverend Reg. Good morning.
Satnam, good morning, Dr. Dukes. We missed you last week, and we know that the situation is just moving into a better opportunity, especially with what happened in Texas. Please let us know what are your whereabouts now.
So, yes, I'm still in Texas. We just went through a crazy snowstorm. It doesn't normally get that cold here in Texas. And, a lot of people were not prepared for such cold weather. And then the fact that the power went out put a lot of people in a very unusual situation over the last few weeks.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And a lot of people were actually joking that 2021 was actually trying to top whatever happened to all of us last year in 2020 in terms of our collective experience and although the two of us are laughing about it, I know that a lot of our guests are actually trying to digest what we mean by collective experience or personal experience, whether or not we're actually labeling these experiences are good or bad. We know that it's an effect of the things that we have been doing consciously or unconsciously. Especially our topic for today is how does one create a positive karma? So, Dr. Dukes, from your point of view, we know that whatever happened in the snowstorm, and like you mentioned earlier, it's something that doesn't usually happen in your place. From your perspective and your background in um, your research as a mystical researcher, where do you think did this snowstorm come from?
Well, things happen in our reality because they're reflective. So what's happening on Earth is scientifically reflective of what's happening on the sun. We're having solar storms, which also bring new solar rays to our planet. And when we get something such as a small sunspot or a coronal mass ejection and it hits our planet, the Earth tends to heat up a little bit, which causes all sorts of other after effects, such as superstorms, volcanoes, earthquakes, things like that. So it's not so much as mysterious as it is a reflective part of nature, what's happening with the superstorms. And what's interesting is that storms have names, and this storm was called um, Uri. Excuse me. The storm was called Uri, the one that came across Texas and snowed us all in for a while. But the meaning behind that name, that meaning evolved into what we would call the angel Uriel. And the characteristics of Uriel of coming through lovingly and bringing enlightenment, but also behind that storm, he's carrying a solar disk. So there is deep meaning in the name of a storm. It's not just a random event. And this came to bring us enlightenment. It came to show us as people vulnerabilities and for us to be able to shore up those vulnerabilities because things didn't have to happen the way they did here in Texas.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Lukes. And we know from metaphysics, when we are vulnerable, it's actually our strength. And it goes against the collective idea that being vulnerable is actually being weak. And we know that the vulnerability has a lot to do with the growth and expansion process that's taking place in the inner world before whatever experience in the physical or material experience will normally happen to someone, or what we call an awakening experience. And
Yes.
because we both know that there's such a thing called an awakening experience, it's a lot easier to appreciate it if one has an understanding of universal principles or universal laws that are at work in one's life. And today, specifically, we're talking about the law of karma or the law of sowing and reaping. And I want to ask you, Dr. Dukes, from your definition, what is the law of karma or the law of sowing and reaping?
Well, for me, the law of karma is just a reflective mechanism. It's a built-in mechanism so that we have an opportunity to look deeply at our own actions. And it's neither good or bad. It's not a system of revenge that's set up to get you back. It's just set up to say, look, this is who you've been. Do you choose to continue to be this person? That's it.
Yes, and it's amazing that you're bringing it up because I know, especially for me, Dr. Dukes, before I learned about the law of sowing and reaping, the only thing that I was thinking many years ago when I was totally oblivious to the universal principles was this. I Because life is suffering and because life is difficult, That's the reason why I was experiencing one limitation after another. And until I learned metaphysics, and until I learned how to use the law of sowing and reaping, or the law of karma, in such a way that it will be fruitful for me, it will bring me joy and delight, I never really knew that there were universal laws in existence. And it's funny because although we're talking about this right now, I know many times in the past, I would live my life on autopilot. I wasn't really mindful of what was running in my head. I wasn't meditating. I wasn't conscious about the quality of my words and the people I was hanging out with. And I know that those things actually have a big factor in terms of creating a positive karmic experience for myself and the rest of the community. Did you ever have to go through the experience where, like me, we're totally oblivious to the universal laws, especially the law that we're talking about today?
Of course, yes. That's what got me interested in all of it, because life was not working for me. I was not a happy camper. Things did not seem to be turning out well for me at all. And once I started to do a little bit of research into metaphysics before it had a name in my reality, it was just the realization that things can come under control to a certain extent. The fact that when you realize that you are actually creating your own karma, that changes in your life can come very quickly by simply altering belief systems. That's what's important to know about karma. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn out thing between you and somebody else. It's just a balancing mechanism. So yes, I had to go through it too. I had to learn that as well, yes.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And I'm very sure for all of us, although we get messages from the universe already to take the time to be mindful, because for me, it's not like one thing happened and then all of a sudden I knew everything about the law of karma. It had to be several, you know, my attention had to be called many times over before I actually started paying attention to spirituality and metaphysics. Was it the same case for you, or were you like, okay, I get this now and I'm going to live my life in a more spiritual, metaphysical way of seeing things? Was it just one time, or for you, was it a series of events?
No, it definitely was a series of events, yes, because it's something to be played with. Once you realize that there are mechanisms, they're intended to be played with and experimented with. So yes, you throw some seeds out there and see what grows. It may not be the seeds you thought, but something always comes up.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. Especially right now, in terms of, for example, in your case in Texas, I'm very sure that there are people who were comfortable and there were people who actually had to go through severe limitations during the snowstorm. And if someone was trying to rebuild their life after the snowstorm, let's say they don't have a place to live at the moment, what's your number one recommendation to someone who's in that position, and how can they use the law of karma to their advantage?
Well, first off, if it was, I can only look at it through my own perspective. I can't say what somebody else should or should not do. But if I were newly in that situation, I'd stop, I'd look around, figure out what it is I asked for, because I know in some way I created this, and then go about unwrapping that present moment to discover the good that's in it. Someone is around me that I'm supposed to meet. I'm there for a specific, in a location for a specific purpose, to either meet up with someone, get something, or to trade off, or to give whatever spiritual gift I may have to give that person at that point in time. And I
Thank
also know that my state of being is paramount in that situation. All I can be is me. With or without shelter, all I can be is me.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. It's amazing. And I want to go back to what you said. Whether a person is conscious of it or not, somewhere along the way, they call the experience to themselves or they asked for it, whether
Mhm.
they were conscious of it or not. And I think it's such a powerful place to be when you begin to realize that whatever disposition you are in right now, you asked for it. And can you please expand on that? Because I'm very sure that for someone who's hearing this for the first time, it might be a total surprise or confusing for them.
Yes, because I know for myself, when I first heard that I was a creator of my own reality, it was startling and confusing. So I would say if you're just hearing this for the first time, know that there are spiritual laws that you can follow. And when you begin to follow spiritual laws, it's not about you being the best person. It's not about attempting to be closest to God. It's not religious. It's just simply an understanding of how things behind the veil actually work. So you begin to work with those mechanisms to create the life that you really and truly desire.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And, here in the Philippines, although we keep talking about be able to create the life that you want or live your life by design or live your life that you desire for yourself, it's such a heavy word for a lot of people here because apparently we have been programmed that life is suffering and that you're a sinner. That's why you're attracting all these negative experience into your life as a punishment. And
Mhm.
I know you can provide enlightenment in that area. And how can one shift if they're hearing it for the first time? In fact, a lot of people think that when you are living your life in delightful ways, or you're so happy you don't feel burdened by anything you have done in the past, then somehow people think that you're some form of evil or you're some from dark force because you're no longer you're no longer bothered by your past mistakes. But we both know that if one carries any form of guilt and shame about their past, it can actually even lead to more detrimental things like depression, and depression can lead to other unhealthy patterns in their lives. So please shine the light on this matter.
So it begins with a thought. And if you are having a life experience where you are less than happy and you're not living your joy, take a moment to explore your belief systems. Do you really and truly believe that the Creator sent you all the way to Earth just to have a horrible experience? Why would they do that? That doesn't even make sense. You came here to have an experience. It doesn't have to be negative, but we were programmed that way, not just in the Philippines, but throughout the world. We've all been under this crazy program, and we don't have to be. It's not a matter of fighting down government or beating the doors down. Change your belief system, and your life will change. And just ask yourself, where did this come from? Why do I believe this? Does it still serve me? If it doesn't serve you, then let it go. You don't have to believe anything that your parents taught you at this point in time.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And one of the things that I want to pull from you is what you just mentioned earlier about for someone to investigate their belief systems because apparently for people life is already made up. Once you're done finishing school and you're just gonna work for it for whatever college degree that you've finished, for a lot of people here, as long as they're already working, they no longer mind investigating their belief systems or checking on the programs that they were consciously or unconsciously wired into. And can you please explain to our viewers why it's so important for every individual to examine their belief systems?
Well, it's about wanting change. Nobody says you have to examine your belief systems. But if you have the desire to create a different life, that's how you begin. If you love your life the way it is, then why mess with it? This is only for people that choose to change, that feel that something is not right. and they want to take the next step into another reality. That's all. There's
Yeah.
no imposition of you have to do this or you have to do that. But if you want to change, examine your belief systems.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And for me, although in the past, for example, we know that every time you are growing, you are also expanding your experience. Especially a lot of us, we have this built-in programming where we think that for every growth, it has to be tantamount to a material demonstration. But when I started learning metaphysical principles, although from a comfortable level of standpoint, I know that you can't learn universal principles and not somehow want to grow or challenge yourself or to discover latent capacities that you have, hidden talents that you may have. So I came to the point where, no matter how comfortable you are materially, people will always be interested in metaphysics in one way or another, because for me, it's just innate for the human soul to want more, to grow more. And I'm very sure that somehow along the way, Dr. Dukes, with you taking a lot of courses, and it's not easy to finish dissertations, I'm very sure there's a certain passion for you why you want to study more and understand how this mechanism of metaphysics or other things that you're learning about is actually helping you become a happier human being, because otherwise I don't think you would be invested in learning this much. And my
I I just enjoy reading. So it's
Mhm.
not about attempting to get somewhere or that I need so many accolades. I simply enjoy reading. If I was going to read the books anyway, why not have a little shiny piece of paper to top it all off? It's just, I guess, a system of organization for me. I mean, I just like to
Wow.
read, you know?
Yeah, and that's very pretty Aquarius in you. So anyway, Dr. Dukes, thank you for sharing that, because even with my clients, honestly, who weren't really into metaphysics to begin with, once they start discovering their capacity to demonstrate, somehow in consciousness, they want to become more of who they are, especially if they're tuning into a particular field of interest. There's a desire that's growing for them to be more, to want more, not just for themselves, but at the same time, they want more because they want to be able to share more to the community. And I've seen this in you over the years, where you're the type of person where every time you have, especially when you know that someone is in need, you don't dilly dally on helping the person. Where did you pick up that kind of attitude?
Because as one individual, we cannot save the world. But when we help someone, it may be saving their world. So if it doesn't, I mean, we just give. You give what you have the ability to give. That's all. So if someone comes across me and they're in need, then I must be able to help them in some way, whether it be with spiritual advice or with money or with helping promote their businesses. Something can usually be done to help them along their path. And it means everything to somebody. They may get a sale that may provide lunch, it might provide dinner, it could provide rent. I mean, whatever. I guess there's no, I mean, the discussion is on karma. And yes, those are good seeds to plant. But what's going to come up from those seeds? I don't know. That's a future event. So you just do what you can in the now to plant those seeds.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Dr. Lutz. And for our viewers, people keep asking me before, why do we always talk about universal laws or the law of sowing and reaping in metaphysics, especially in the show? One of the reasons why we're talking about it, metaphysical ministers are actually soul doctors. So it's actually the job of a metaphysical minister to educate their clients, whether or not they're going with the flow of the universal laws, or they're going against it. That's why they're having a hard time living up to the optimal level of their lives in every area or any aspect of their lives. But we'll talk more about it after a short commercial.
Awesome.
Hello, Michael. Hi, Michael.
We'll be back shortly. Is Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I'm a king of rock, there is none higher. Some your MCs should call me sire. To hold my kingdom, you must choose fire. I won't stop rocking till I retire. Now we rock up parties and come correct. All settle on time and rhyme connect.
Back to Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila. We'll be back shortly. This is Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I'm a king of rock, there is none higher. Some your MCs should call me sire. To hold my kingdom, you must choose fire. I won't stop rocking till I retire. Now we rock up parties and come correct. All settle on time and rhyme connect.
Now back to Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Satnam, everyone. I am Reverend and I'm here again for Practical Magic. And we're talking about the law of karma and how, when you know how to utilize the law of karma or the law of sowing and reaping, it can actually help you in your personal life or your professional life. And I'm here again with my colleague, Dr. Yolanda Dukes. And earlier, she mentioned something about you'll never know how it's actually going to come back to you. And I just would like to emphasize on what she was saying earlier. You don't know that whatever good deed that you're actually doing, it might actually provide a meal for someone, or some break that might be important to the person. And I actually am very particular with being able to provide an opportunity or some form of comfort to someone, because one of the things that I had to deal with in life many times is, how do I get my dream, but at the same time be in the space where I'm comfortable doing it. I'm not going to think about my food. And that's why I love what she's talking about, because one of the things that I had to deal with when I left our family home was, if I do what I love to do, I know there's going to be some sacrifices in it. But for me, it's not necessarily a sacrifice. It's just the frequency that I have to match. If I wanted to do something, I know there's going to be a certain frequency that will match it. And part of it, honestly, was there are days when you're doing what you love to do that it feels so good that someone is actually thinking of how they can actually plant a good deed for you. And Dr. Dukes, I want to ask you to expand on it, please, because what you just said earlier is actually something that totally resonates with me because I had to go through it myself.
But we're here to learn, right? We're here to learn, to evolve, and I think one of the questions people might be asking is, what is awakening? We have to acknowledge that we're mind, that we're body, and that we're soul. And our souls are beginning to wake up. And that's what can be so startling. We begin to look at our life and then decide whether or not things were not necessarily working for us. And it can be very painful in the onset, but what's coming next is what's awesome. And then it gets more awesome and more awesome and more awesome. So plant
Yes.
your own seeds, tend to your own garden for a while.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And honestly, I'm very grateful that you mentioned that because naturally, when I moved out of the house, one of the things that I had to deal with was, where was I going to get my next meal? I had moments like that. So when people talk to me about things like that, it does resonate with me a lot. And it reminds me of the advocacy of John Bon Jovi because he has the Soul Kitchen. I don't know if you have it in Texas, but he has this pay it forward concept in his restaurant. And it's so important because I know what it feels like to have to push yourself to work and then you're starving compared to, you're just working and you don't have to think about your next meal. It's so much easier to work that way. And for me, Dr. Dukes, the reason why I love our topic so much is because I believe that the universe is always operating for the greater good of everyone. Every decade, every lifetime, there's an offering to all of us to actually work together as a team so that big demonstrations of some sort can actually be manifested in the experience, like what happened during the Renaissance. And a lot of people are actually saying that during the global pandemic and the aftermath of that, it's supposed to provide us enlightenment and a greater awakening experience for the collective. And we're supposed to discover something as a team globally. And I really believe that it's pointing towards that direction because the internet is available to everyone right now. It's a lot easier for all of us to work together, even if you're there in Dallas and I'm here in the Philippines. So, what do you think is what are these experiences actually summing up to for you? Because I really feel that there's a calling for majority of the people globally to work together. And I'm not sure what you're sensing as a mystical researcher. Is there something specific that you think all this collective experience is leading us to do right now?
Oh, most definitely. It's leading us to be more of who we are. If you've
Mm.
lost your job, then there's something that you probably like to tinker with. There's something else. There's a job for you that may not be advertised. It's something that you're supposed to discover, something you're supposed to bring about. This is a wonderful time for the backyard tinkerers, for people that are building things collectively. Men and women through all walks of life are brilliant people. And when we all bring that brilliance together in our own communities for the benefit of our children and for our elderly, we'll be living in a completely different level of society. So, yes, the pandemic was a wonderful opportunity for people to sit and be quiet, to discover what's really inside them, to get their thoughts organized, to follow their joy. This is an opportunity. This isn't a bad thing at all.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Lukes. And I distinctly remember one time we were having this conversation when someone, I think, ran out of gas, and you and Phil, I think, were around the corner, and you actually helped out the person. And not a lot of people will actually do it because, number one, they would be concerned for themselves. They don't know what kind of person they're actually dealing with. So it's something that I want to shine the spotlight on because I think it's so important for us to pause from time to time and see how we can help other people. Because apparently in the past, a lot of us, we've been programmed that if we're going to open the space for helping others, it might be dangerous. But in your case, you're the type of person to pause and then reach out to someone who's actually in need. And I want to shine the spotlight on that because, like what you mentioned earlier, as you keep planting those seeds, you'll never know what opportunity or harvest is actually going to come about for you. And I'm very sure after doing that act of kindness to someone, I'm very sure that you also had a lot of other pleasant experiences that came about after doing that. So,
You know,
yeah,
to me at this point, everything is a pleasant experience. It
amazing.
might look, unusual to another person, but I'm going to pull the best out of it, you know? So just like when you have the opportunity to assist someone, this particular family of people, they needed gas money. Now, I filled up their car with gas and we went back into the store and bought a lottery ticket, and I actually won some money right after I put gas in
Wow,
their car. So it was a very
amazing.
funny turnaround. But what stops people from giving random people money on the street is we're taught that, oh, they'll use it for drugs, oh, they'll use it for drinking. It's not a matter of that. If you impose your own judgment from my own perspective, if I propose my own judgment and say, I'm not going to help them because I think that they're going to go use it for alcohol. If they're an alcoholic, that drink may have saved their life that night. So that before that they take that opportunity to go and get themselves some help. You don't know what they're going through. So I can only give the gift based on what I'm looking at and what I'm seeing. But if I provide judgment on that, I'm actually planting seeds of what would be considered negative karma. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yeah. And it's amazing that you actually shared it, Dr. Dukes, because we don't know most of the time that somehow we're imposing our perspective on others. So the gift was not freely given or sincerely given, rather. And I think it's so important for us to actually discuss it because although a lot of people keep telling me, why do you discuss all those acts of kindness or good deeds? Honestly, personally, for me, I've learned that you're supposed to keep this thing secret, but because we are in a show and we want people to have the tools to actually rise above whatever limitation that they have. That's the reason why we are discussing this. But I'm very sure that if this wasn't my primary job, I wasn't an ordained metaphysical minister, I wouldn't have the inkling to talk about these things with other people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's only because it's our part of our duty is to help people live their lives a lot easier by making them understand that it's right within them to change their lives and that they have spiritual tools to actually help them move past whatever seeming very, very difficult physical limitation they have. Things turn around. And I'm happy that you actually talked about uh, winning the lottery money because I'm not sure, Dr. Dukes, if you were able to read the whole article, but one of the things that was in that article, someone after a very devastating typhoon in the Philippines, Typhoon Yolanda, the house was unscathed, and then that person won 26 million in the lottery, and then a couple of years later won another lottery. So so it's becoming a predictive thing. And
Yeah.
one of my teachers, Dr. George Sheason, used to say when he was still alive, there are so many people in this world. They're not really academically smart, but you can see by the sincerity of their intentions, so many good things actually come to pass for them. And it almost seems like it's a magical thing, but it's actually just them learning how to plant good deeds and learning how to plant good deeds secretly. And the secret factor is actually a very important thing. Honestly, for me, it's very important to do it as much as possible in secret because it comes from what I learned from the metaphysical interpretation of the Bible. Plant your good deeds in secret so the Father, the desire, can answer you openly. And I'm sure you can share more about it, Dr. Dukes. Why is it important to do your acts of kindness secretly?
Because it really and truly only means something to the person that you're helping. It's nobody else's business. That's
Yes,
it. It only means something to that one person or that
yes,
family.
yes. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And it's amazing that you actually mentioned that the value of that good deed only means to that person or to that family because it's not supposed to be like a news where people can actually feast on. Although naturally in metaphysical books or the books that we have in our university or the recommended reading list, it's something that most people can read a lot about. And the only reason why it's discussed in metaphysical books is because the primary role of a metaphysical literature is number one to uplift the person, to make them
Mhm.
aware of truth principles that are actually at work. Meaning, when we talk about truth principles, another term for it is metaphysical laws or universal laws. What is working for someone, it's like the law of gravity. Whether or not you accept the law of gravity, you're always going to remain grounded. And it's just like you realizing that whether you see electricity or not, when you put your hand in between an electrocuted space or an electrical wiring, you can actually get electrocuted for that. And this is the only reason why in metaphysics we make people aware of universal principles that most often than not people bypass. I have bypassed it myself. And that's why when I learned it, and when people come to me for counseling and they ask specifically, is there anything in terms of metaphysics that they can utilize? I share that. And Dr. Dukes, I know that when we talk about karma, we're not only talking about karma in this present lifetime, we're also talking about karma in their other lifetimes. And I'm sure that as someone who does past life reading and mystical research, you have a lot of content to share about it. So, can you please give us an example? What in particular in your case study did you have to explain to someone about their karmic harvest in this lifetime? Why things may be difficult for them in this particular lifetime, but the seed or the root cause of that came from their previous life?
Well, difficulties in general can be changed in a moment by
Mm-hmm.
examining your belief system and just choosing to change your perspective. Somebody might see a pile of dirt, another person might see material to build a house. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So it really and truly is about perspective. Now, about karmic debt from past lifetimes, again, it's a belief system, it's self imposed, but it's a tool of reflection. So if you had a soldier who spent his time going from village to village, raping and pillaging, that person may come into another lifetime where they are raped or molested starting from an early age. Again, it's not a negative, it's a tool of reflection. So you have an opportunity to come back and be vulnerable and helpless as well, so that you experience what you imposed upon other people.
Yeah.
So when we judge it and say, oh my goodness, this is horrible and this is evil, you're only highlighting part of the mechanism. because it takes both negative and positive to make the mechanism work properly. You can't be all 100% spiritual and all 100% good or all 100% evil. We're not put together that way. Be who you are, live your life as happily as you can. If you're unhappy, examine your belief systems, choose to change.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And I know that change is not easy. Did you have to go through a process wherein you asked for someone's help so that you can actually move closer and closer to your desired outcome? And like what you mentioned, at this point in your life, you're already in the space that you are at peace with what is. Personally, for me, I had to seek help from spiritual mentors that helped me understand how I was evolving and how I can appreciate what was happening to me in the moment. Did you have to go through that kind of process yourself?
Of course, I went out seeking. I mean, when we become metaphysicians, what we are, from my perspective, we're simply students of that which we call God. We are there to highlight, honor, and respect and live within the universal laws that bound us to this 3D space-time continuum.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And I love that you talked about that there's a feeling of uh, limitation in a way because of the physical aspect of it. For example, when we talk about money, for example, there's a lot of emotions coming up for people when money is brought into the table for discussion. And I'm very sure that you have a lot of clients going to you for concerns about money. And limitations about money may come from their present conditioning, or it may also come from their previous lifetime. And how do you actually address a general issue? For example, debt is one, or money will just come to the person every now and then. So, how do you actually process it? And what do you think is a simple thing that our audience can actually pick up from your discussion tonight?
So I'll give you an example of planting the seed. A very simple, easy to follow personal example. So you can live someplace that you may not think is the nicest of places, maybe not the most beautiful, not a place that you would want to live in. If you sit for a moment and change your perspective and know that you're there for a reason, the place around you might change. So all of a sudden, the place you're living now has a new owner, and that person has come in to revitalize. So you've put positive thoughts into this place, and now all of a sudden there's a new paint job, there's a new facade. They've come in and renewed things. So all of a sudden, you didn't even move, but you have a brand new place. You have something better. You didn't move,
Yeah.
but you literally changed it with your thoughts in your mind.
Yes. Amazing, Dr. Dukes. Thank you for sharing that. And it's just amazing that prior to us talking about this, my siblings and I were talking about our concern as a family, the things that we had to deal with growing up. Especially today is our dad's death anniversary. And we saw as a family how we had to change our perspective many times over to reach the position that we are all in today. And I know that what you're saying is true because you can be in the same place but change your way of seeing things, and it will also change the way you're doing things, and the way you're doing things will actually create a life experience for you that may be delightful or not. And we'll talk more about it after we pause for a short commercial.
We'll be back shortly. This is Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Pagpatak ng 7, dapat lahat nakatutok sa amin. Catch these programs at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. Talk Shop Asia Global, USA Edition, with Rolly Pagaspas and Rosario Cajucom Bradbury. Home Not Alone, Sounds from Home, with Papa Gio. And Freedom in Christ, with Felson. It's all about entrepreneurship, entertainment, and enlightenment. Back-to-back-to-back programs at 7. LA at 7. LA at 7. Exclusively on V81 Radio, Los Angeles. I-download na ang aming mobile app at mag-enjoy sa mga kantang Tatak Pinoy and feel like you're home. The V81 Radio mobile app, available in the App Store and Google Play Store. V81 Radio mobile app, free now, free forever. Now back to Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Satnam, everyone. I am back for Practical Magic with our guest, Dr. Yolanda Dukes. And we're talking about how to create a positive karma. And before we start again with the questions, Michael, please make sure that Dr. Dukes is back so that both of us can respond to our friends watching all the way in Arizona, I think. Blanca Lamar Gonzalez is watching. Dr. Blanca, Reverend Tracy, hello there to all of you. And Dr. Blanca was saying, it's a fact that people that share love come from very struggled beginnings, but God has us where He wants us to be. Love you, my colleague. Amen. And she's sending us a heart. So, anyway, Dr. Dukes. So, you know, earlier I was talking about my family and my siblings, and that all of us, we had to go through many shifts in our perspective before we were actually able to get the breaks that we want. And in fact, I would say that, when you see that you're getting the break that you want, now you're experiencing something that in the past you just wish that you would actually experience, but it's a constant evolution. And I know for Dr. Dukes herself, the place that she has right now, and it's one of my favorite stories that she has shared with me, how she has sown seeds in the past about how she was going to demonstrate her amazing, beautiful place right now. And Dr. Dukes, can you please share with us how you were able to demonstrate your beautiful space right now, coming from a metaphysical way of planting seeds?
Believe that you can have what it is you truly want. It begins with a thought. It really and truly does. When you recognize and realize how the mechanism works, and that you have that picture frame in your mind, it's going to manifest for you. You may not know exactly how, you may not know exactly when, but that doesn't matter. Only the thought matters. So I didn't think, oh, well, it can't be done. When you think it can't be done, it won't be done.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And in particular, I love, and I remember you share this particular story about, I love how comfortable the sheets are, something like that. Those were just simple seeds that you were planting, but those words actually turned out to be a living, breathing experience for you. And I loved how you talked about the sheets in your bed. And can you please explain more about it? Because I'm very sure that a lot of our Filipino viewers, especially OFWs, overseas Filipino workers who are watching this right now, and they're demonstrating a place that they would like to live. They'd like to share how particular seeds, by the use of words, can actually create an experience.
Well, all of your words are seeds. I mean, that's how the mechanism works. If you imagine that you're surrounded by intelligent energy, and that intelligent energy is looking to fulfill your requests, why not make the biggest and the best requests? I have the most comfortable sheets on the planet. They keep me comfortable. They're cool enough. I have the best pillows. I have the most magnificent, luxurious bed. I love the way my feet feel on the carpet. You just begin to plant the, doesn't matter what's actually happening in your reality. It's about saying those positive things that will manifest in your reality at some point. So that's all I
Thank you for
did. I wanted a new bed.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes, because I remember after you shared that with me, one of the things that I wanted to experience, of course, for our viewers who are just watching this right now, I was taking my bachelor's degree in University of Metaphysics, and Dr. Dukes was actually the one anchoring a lot of interviews for so many people in the University of Metaphysics. She was helping a lot of us articulate what we were doing because honestly, before her interview, so many of us, including me, I think we were in the space where we know how to do what we were supposed to do energetically, but in terms of actually articulating what we were supposed to do, until we were asked the right questions, we didn't really know how to explain uh, comfortably what we were doing in metaphysics. And I just want to shine the spotlight on it because going back to what she mentioned earlier, those interviews actually provided opportunities for other metaphysical practitioners, especially the ones who were just fresh out of college, to be able to attract paying clients to themselves. And thank you for that, Dr. Dukes, because I really enjoyed my first interview with you. And back then, I was just borrowing studio from a friend in another digital channel. So many things I know that you are experiencing right now, a comfortable life, an amazing, loving partner. You were able to draw that because you were generously planting seeds. And like what you mentioned earlier, you don't know exactly how it's going to come back. But when it does come back in a bountiful way. So, Dr. Dukes, just to keep things simpler and for us to be able to take massive action from what we're learning from you, aside from the words, what's the next step that we can do in order to accelerate our harvest of the kind of experience that we would like to enjoy?
It stopped for a moment. I missed your question, love.
Yeah. I was asking for us, because you talked about the power of words earlier, and just being mindful about what other people need. If we were to take massive action from being able to create a positive karmic experience, what are simple practical steps that we can take right after this interview so that we can move closer to the outcome that we want, or create the harvest or positive karma that we want?
Well, first, understanding that karma is a mechanism of reflection. Understand that, you understand a huge part of how to, I would say, direct your life into a direction that you want. And number two is realizing that karma is self imposed.
Mhm.
And three, that it's neither good or bad.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. I love what you talked about, that karma is self imposed. And I know that as a person is able to expand their awareness, that's also the time they'll be able to expand the quality of their experience. Because, for example, Dr. Dukes, when you first interviewed me at that time, I was just thinking that it's possible for me to attract international clients or clients outside the Philippines. Although I would get clients abroad, but most of them are Filipinos because uh, they were referred to me by a friend of a friend, things like that. But I know that after that interview, somehow other people also got curious about what I was doing, and it did provide the quality experience that I wanted. And thank you for that. And also for, because you mentioned earlier that it's self-imposed. So how does one begin to expand the quality of their experience? Especially, I'm sure, Dr. Dukes, before you moved into the space, you were wanting to just experience the particular house that you wanted to live in, or how, what particular comfort you're going to experience after you manifest it. But after you manifested that, there's a place in your consciousness where you want to experience something better, something higher than your quality of life right now. And please explain to us, because I'm very sure that expanding one's awareness is a very important topic. Because I think, and correct me if I am wrong, some of our physical experiences or material demonstrations, we either experience them temporarily because the awareness wasn't there to begin with, to actually have that experience stay in your frequency. uh, did I get that question across to you clearly, or do I need to rephrase it?
Just make it smaller. Say it
All
again.
right. For example, when you were wanting to demonstrate your place right now, I'm very sure that in the past, that was the preoccupation of your focus. It was like the end and be all of your, maybe 90% of your energy. That's where it went to in demonstrating the space. But naturally, after demonstrating that space, you're going to go to another level of wanting. You want to demonstrate something else
Hmm.
aside from what you have right now. Probably you want to maintain the space or whatever comfort that you have right now. So I noticed for myself that when I wasn't mindful of the things that I was enjoying or my blessings, they were short lived. But when I was more conscious of what I have, they had the things that I was enjoying had a tendency to stay longer, or it was more meaningful to me, and it was a lot easier to actually demonstrate other things because I was in the space where I was mindful of what I have, and at the same time I was grateful for the blessings, and I was also grateful for whatever desire was expanding internally in my space. So I'm sure right now you're wanting to demonstrate some other things because you have already manifested the things that you were just praying for or wishing for in the past.
Yes. Well, of course, there's always something else. I mean, otherwise, you begin to feel like you're stagnating, and that's not creating if you feel like you're stagnating. So I just simply follow my interests from day to day. I mean, it's not something I plan out and go, oh, I'm going to go do A, B, C, and D. If I feel like reading something, I read something. If I feel like spending company with spending time with someone, I do that. It just depends and it varies widely just based on what I'm going to enjoy from day to day.
Yes, amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes, because one of the things that for me, I'm not sure if it's part of your schedule, but every day there are certain things that I do repetitively, such as checking my intentions, the intentions that I want to experience for this quarter or next quarter or for the next couple of years. And actually, it took time as well for me to be in the space where I was just gonna let go of my practices. I was going to allow the universe to fill in the other details, because somehow when I felt that I had to plant the seeds and that I had to tend to the garden of consciousness that we're talking about, somehow the idea of surrendering the intention or your physical activity was somewhat difficult for me to do in the beginning of of learning about the law of attraction or learning about the law of karma or the law of sowing and reaping. So I want to ask you, Dr. Dukes, why do you think is it difficult for a lot of people to let go of, physically intending or even mentally doing something about the seeds that they're planting? Surrender is such a difficult concept for most people.
It only feels difficult because it's a very best misunderstood word. Because the only thing that comes to mind when you surrender is you are giving up something. And you're really and truly just giving up your resistance to the life that you really want.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes, because especially in the Philippines, when we talk about people moving out of the house, it's such a big deal for us, especially for parents, because it's not usual for parents to experience their children moving out of the house. And recently, a family member of mine had a blessed experience and is moving to a better destination. And I'm sure that uh, the family members of my relative will be able to get the benefit from you, how the power of surrender can actually benefit everyone.
Most definitely. Trust me, you're not giving up anything. You're giving up your limiting belief. But when you're a limiting belief can feel like a brick wall, something that you can't see through. So when you don't have any idea what's on the other side of that belief, you cling to it because it's the only thing you think that you possibly have. So surrendering is literally lowering that wall so that you can see past.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing it, Dr. Dukes, because it's still related to how we create a positive karma or how we create a bountiful harvest that will actually work for our personal and professional lives. Because many times when we want to experience the attraction of an experience, we forget that there are certain steps that we need to take. And part of those steps that we're talking about, part of the steps there is actually the step where we have to let go and surrender. And I love what she said about you're just actually surrendering the limiting belief. And that's why I think meditation is so important so that you can bring yourself in alignment where you can tell yourself this or something better can actually come to pass. Please tell us, Dr. Dukes, about the power of meditation and how it actually helps in the process of creating a positive karmic experience, especially being able to say this or something better can actually happen in one's life.
I would say that that your field of vision of things that you see before you is limited. But in
Mhm.
silence, your human life becomes unlimited. All the possibilities are available to choose from if you stop and quiet your mind for a little bit.
Amazing. And something very beautiful that I think we can all practice because I'm not sure how many of you actually see this as a form of noise. Mindlessly scrolling on Facebook or other social media platform is actually another way of creating the noise internally.
Mhm.
And that's why I think it's so important to meditate. And Dr. Dukes, by the way, has a beautiful book about the quiet mind. And I'm not sure if she's still giving it for free or if she's charging for it right now. But it's something that I would encourage our viewers to actually take the time to read. It's very, very practical. It will make you mindful about the way your mind works and how it's actually connected to our topic for today. And Dr. Dukes, before we go to the end of the show, what's I know you've discussed so much, but what's the one practical magic tip that you want me and the rest of our viewers to hold on to for the rest of the week about creating a positive karma?
Examine your belief systems. Where do your beliefs come from about money? Where do your beliefs come from about where you live and how you live? If it's only external, Stop and examine your belief systems and make new choices. I choose to believe something else is possible for my life. I choose to believe I can change locations. I choose to believe I can have everything I've ever dreamed of. That's my
I love
advice.
that. I love that. And especially, I want to affirm it again for myself. I choose to believe that I can have anything that I've ever dreamed of. And anyway, thank you so much, Tracy. Happy sunrise to you. Dr. Blanca Lamar is watching. And at the same time, Michael, please flash the AOB. I want to thank Unity Philippine Spiritual Center and Benedictine International School. They helped me with the beginning of the show for the first season. And at the same time, next one, please. Dr. Dukes, I give you the opportunity to share to our viewers your experience of the University of Metaphysics.
Oh my goodness gracious. I have so many words. I absolutely love my experience. It's ongoing. I believe it just becomes part of your life. And you guys can always check out my video on Intuitive Insights with my interview with the thesis advisor, Dr. Linda Exley, if you want to know more about the University of Sedona.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Dr. Dukes. The next one, please. Dr. Dukes, I'm sure that both of us can relate to how amazing the scholarship program is, but I want to give you the floor. I'm sure you have such awesome things to say about the doctoral program, especially I think you finished 2 doctoral programs already.
Just a one. I'm not done with the other one yet. I'm working on it. It'll be done soon.
All right. And Dr. Dukes, we know about the practical value of how amazing the tuition fees are made, and it's even before the lockdown. This was already the setup of University of Metaphysics. They've done this for about 20 years now. uh, what can you say about the scholarship payment system?
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. Again, we talked about that in the video with Dr. Exley. Where there's no interest payments. If you're having a difficult time paying your tuition, call the university. They'll put it on hold for you. They'll pray for you and continue your studies until things get better. It's a wonderful
Mm,
program.
thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dukes. And in case anyone would like to connect with you, they would like to have a session with you, how can they reach you?
They can reach me at my website at perspectivemetaphysics.com. You can
Mhm.
schedule a free consultation to have a Zoom session. And soon, if you're here in Texas, we'll be opening up to do in-person sessions once again, because I'm getting a lot of requests for those.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Dukes, for sharing it. Is there anything else that you would like our viewers to know about your services or your upcoming events?
Yes, I also offer ascension counseling. There's some beautiful crystals on the website, things for sale, meditation beads. You can find the book, The Quiet Mind, on Amazon.com. It's affordable. Anybody can afford it. I made it really, really low, because the information is what's important, not so much as the energy exchange.
All right. Thank you for sharing those, Dr. Dukes. And I also would like to thank Dr. Anita Caprice, Dr. Diana Vihni, Dr. Cindy Palos, my brother Anthony Benton Brown, Andrew S.P. Whitburn, and also Dr. Kathleen Riley, Jennifer Hill, Reverend Adam Hayden, Dr. Stephen J. Cosmina and his wife, and Dr. Kathleen Riley, and also Tina Brinkley Potts. And the next one, please. Also, I want to thank Arnel Caranto and Sheila Tillich. And also, I want to thank Michael, our tech team, Papa Gio, Sir Rolly Pagaspas, and at the same time, Sir Charlie Diaz, my co-producers. And congratulations to Talk Shop Asia for celebrating their 6th anniversary. in our digital radio. So wow, we know that it's amazing to be able to stay 6 years in digital radio. So Satnam, Dr. Dukes, I trust that I can have you again for the next episodes of Practical Magic and my other show, Perspective. It's always a pleasure working with you.
Always. I love you so much. I'm so incredibly proud of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dukes. Likewise, I love you too, and regards to Phil. And we look forward to having you here in the Philippines. We'll never know. You can just have, sessions here, maybe have classes here. We'll never know. It might be a working vacation.
Yeah, we'll
So,
just plant the seeds. I would love to come. Yes.
yes, beautiful. And at the same time, I want to invite everyone, all these things that we're talking about, it's just amazing to have and realize that we have spiritual tools readily available to all of us so that we can shift our concerns right now. If you're not happy about it, you can be happier because you have the tools already available to you. And if you're already happy, I know that you can take yourself into another level of happiness and expansion. And before we end the show, I just want to invite everyone to close your eyes and affirm this protection prayer from Unity with me. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is and all is well. And I invite everyone to simply touch their hearts and just take a deep breath in and out. Take a deep breath in and out. Take a deep breath in and out. And let's chant Satnam 3 times. One for ourselves, the next one for someone we are praying for, and the third for our global village. Satnam. 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 Thank you everyone for tuning in. It's such a beautiful Sunday, and I trust that you always remember you are the magic you've been waiting for. See you all again next week.
Consistently delivering the very best in metaphysics. Here in Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Till next time, only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Tunog Pinoy, Tatak Pinoy, your all hits, all Pinoy digital radio station in South Manila. This is V81 Radio.
Ito ang paborito ng bawat Pilipino. Basta all hits, all Pinoy, panalo. Merong kwentong iyakan at tawanan. Kahit nasaan ka man, ito'y mapapakinggan.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Ito ang radio mo, ito ang radio ko.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Dahil mahal namin kayo.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Para sa inyo ito, V81 Radio.